Honoring our community's veterans. First Sergeant J.W. Young, Jr., United States Marine Corps. Presented by the Stone Heritage Museum. And Belfry High School's Kentucky Studies Classroom. America's veterans have served our nation proudly, and we believe in recognizing them whenever possible. Whether honoring them at the Stone Heritage Museum, celebrating their achievements within our high school, or providing the inspiration for one of country music's greatest songs throughout our community, we make certain that our veterans know how very important they are to us.
On November 26, 1938, unknowingly to his family, a hero was born. Son of James Wallace Sr. and Blanche Ray Young. First Sergeant Young spent 22 years serving in many engagements during the Vietnam Wars. First Sergeant J.W. Young was known by many names. To his children, he was known as Dad. To his wife, he was known as loving husband. To his neighbors and to his community, he was known as friend. But to the amazing country, he was known simply as hero. He was a proud member of the United States Marine Corps. He was awarded 3 Purple Hearts and a Bronze Star with a Combat V. Unfortunately, First Sergeant Young is no longer with us, but in this video we are very proud to honor J.W. Young for his sacrifices. In this video, we would love to honor this amazing hero and his kind, loving family. He was a lover of God, family, and his country.
Well, I think Dad would want everybody to know that, how much he loved his country, and most people that knew him, they knew that. He always put God first, then his country, and then family. To several people, he was a hero, and to his family, he was. But he was Daddy, and when he retired, after 22 years, when he went in, he was 17 years old, and he came out at 39. Who has a retirement at 39 years old? And he really, at that time, wasn't really ready to come out. But he had 2 girls here, my sister and I, my sister was 3 months old before he ever laid eyes on her, and I was 3 days old. So he said he wanted a daddy that his kids knew, and that was home. So that was the deciding factor on him coming out, because he would have gladly put in 20 more years and loved it. But he wanted to be a dad that we got to see every day. So even though he made sacrifices while he was in the service, it was a sacrifice to leave it too, because he loved it, you know. But at that time, I think it was kind of family was what he was thinking about. So
It was just a gun-ho, you know, everything he done, it was, I don't know, he was a remarkable man. He was a remarkable man.
Is there any particular story that sticks out in your mind that he used to like to tell about his days in the Corps? Any one story, or was that more kind of with his Army buddies?
Well, I know this one time
Anybody?
he was going to go and get tattoos, so 4 of his buddies went with him, and he said, "Go ahead and y'all get your tattoos done. I'm gonna look around." When they got finished, he said, "Okay, let's go. I'm not getting no tattoo."
He wouldn't do it.
He would not get no tattoo. He'd never had a tattoo. Being in the Marine Corps, you would think, you know, he would have tattoos, but he never had a tattoo. And I don't know, just when he passed away too, you could tell how many friends that he had. I mean, because Roger's funeral home was overwhelming. I mean, it was just, they couldn't have held nobody else, I don't think, in there.
you know, Dad wasn't one to really. He was a very proud
Yeah, he didn't boast.
man, but he wasn't a boastful man. He let you know that he was proud, and you could, anybody that knew him, whether it be a co-worker, a friend, a neighbor, a casual acquaintance, you knew that was American right there. And but he didn't boast, so a lot of stuff, and you know, I've tore myself up with this, you know, since he's passed away. There's a lot of stuff that I have found out about Daddy since he passed away, because he didn't really tell us a whole lot. And that book that we went through, you know, he would tell certain stories about, you know, during the war, that how he never left anybody, you know. And you do not leave your fellow man, you do not. And a drill instructor, and, you know, he was, I had heard that, and to be honest, when I was younger, it kind of went in one ear and out the other. I heard what he said, but did I really take in deep thought what that meant? And then when it was in that book, and then, you know, when you read that and you see that in writing, and just to say, gosh, that was my dad, you know. I can remember a story, has nothing to do with Marines, or the service, but being sick. I was a healthy child and, you know, active, but I can remember being sick and having a fever for like 3 or 4 days, and we'd always sleep on the couch, and Dad would always sleep right there in the floor beside us, you know, me and my sister both. So that's what it was. He never did leave us, and I think that's just what I think the Marines, in a way, had saved his life, because when he was 17 years old, he didn't have the best childhood, and you know, his mother had passed away when he was 7, and some things had happened, and I think he was headed down, he had lived with his grandmother, and I think he was headed down that road, that he was just a young punk. He thought he knew everything. Nobody could tell him what to do. And he was in Pikeville one day, and they had recruits over there, and they'd ask him, you know, how old he was and what have you, and he said that they had a bar there where you can do chin-ups or whatever, and I think he barely weighed 120 pounds at that time, and they said that where he was underage, that he had to have a parental consent, an adult consent. So he went and asked his grandmother, and she said they called him Junior. He was known as Junior to his family. And she said, absolutely not. You can wait till you're 18 and you don't need a signature. Well, he went back next couple days, and those recruits said, oh, well, you couldn't handle the Corps. And that made him that much more mad, you know. So he went back and asked his grandmother again, and she said, no, I've done told you once, I'm not signing and giving permission. You wait till you're 18, and if that's what you want to do, then you do it. I'm not signing. He went back and told the Marines again, and they was like, yeah, you couldn't handle it, and giving him a hard time.
Tell him to go home and grow up.
And so when he went back, I think like the third time, and he begged his grandmother, she said, all right, here you go. So she went down there like the next day and signed, agreed to have him put in there, join the Marine Corps. And when he signed up, he was in boot camp, and I think it was about 6 or 8 weeks before he was able to get his first phone call. And he called his grandmother, and he begged her. He said, get me out of here. And she said, no. He said, these people are crazy. And she said, absolutely not. You wanted to go. I begged to not go. You wouldn't stop until, so there you go. You tough it out. And I think at that time he had signed up for 2 years. In that time, his brother had been shot and killed, his younger brother, which was like 16 at the time. And Dad had a lot of hatred and a lot of vengeance, and so when his 2 years was up, he got out. And Dad was bound and determined when, after his brother got killed, that he was going to find out who done it, and he was basically going to kill them. I mean, he had a lot of hatred, a lot of vengeance, and so he came out after his 2 years, and then his grandmother, she told him, she said, now, Junior, I know I didn't want you to go into the Marines. She said, but I think that's the best thing for you. She said, this civilian life is no life for you. She said, you're either going to end up in prison or you're going to end up dead. She said, the best thing that you can do is re-enlist and make a career out of it. So that's when he went and he enlisted for 20 more years after serving. So, you know, and it wasn't until after he got out of the service. He retired in 1977, and he was still once a Marine, always a Marine. That was to the end. But like 2 years after that, you know, that's when he gave his life to the Lord. And then I think that's when all the forgiveness came, because up until that point, you know, he went several years without speaking to his dad because of some circumstances of him growing up. But that was eating at him more than it was anybody else. So I think in 1979 when he gave his heart to the Lord, I think that was the turning point, and that was the best decision that he ever did make, and that was one of his greatest blessings, you know. So
yeah, you mentioned once Marine, always Marine, and you mentioned the story a few minutes ago about how that never leave someone behind and never leave their side, and you talk about how they didn't carry it over into his home life. You shared with me a story earlier, off camera, about getting a call recently. Do you want to share that story?
yeah, here recently I was at Mom's house, and the phone rang, and I seen on the caller ID that it was a long distance number, so I give it to my mom, and she answered the phone, and she thought it was at first somebody trying to solicit, you know, money or something else. And so when they asked for her, she said, no, this wasn't her, you know, would you like to leave a message? But then they went on and was talking. They introduced themselves, said, well, I'm looking for James Young's residence, and I know he was a Marine and, you know, had retired. Said, but I know that he passed away a little over 2 years ago. And so that's when Mom said, well, yeah, this is his widow. Said, I thought she was trying to, you know, want to solicit for some other reason, money or what have you. And so he said, well, I got on the internet. He said, I do some things with veterans. Said, I was actually in the Vietnam War with your husband. And said, actually, when he got wounded, said, I was actually the one that wrapped his elbow up. And he said, I just could not go any longer without calling you and letting you know how much respect I had for that man. Now, this was probably in 1968, and I think he said it had been since 1972 since he had seen that. And I just thought that was just amazing that this man took the time 40 years later, 40 plus, and let my mom know, said, hey, I love this man. I had respect for this man. What a great hero that he was. And he had read in the obituary, he said, I see that you all have 2 daughters. Said, make sure you tell both your girls what a fine man that they had for a daddy. And of course we already knew that. But it is so good to hear people when they come up to you. I mean, I was always proud to be J.W. Young's daughter. You know, I was cotton top.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
when I finally got here at 2 years old, it was white as snow. So Dad always nicknamed me Cotton Top. Every birthday card, Christmas card, that's what it had on it. So, and of course in the teenage years, that embarrassed me. And I said, you know, that's our secret, Dad. You know, don't, you know, you can call me Cotton Top at the house, but don't call me out in public. But later on in life, that was the only thing I wanted him to call me. So, we were blessed. We were blessed. I think this community was blessed. We was blessed as a family. Dad, he always thought, like you said, giving back, you know, never leaving or thinking of others before yourself. He always put other people before himself. I always thought of other people. Christmases, I know he had a teacher, Miss Blackburn, a story that he said was his 3rd grade teacher, Audrey Blackburn. And up until probably about 10, 12 years ago when she passed away, he always sent her a Christmas card. There was about 300 to 400 Christmas cards that Dad mailed out every year. And so his thing was, you know, you can do things for somebody, you can buy them something, but if you buy them a card or if you just acknowledge their birthday or something that maybe everybody else wouldn't acknowledge, he kind of thought that went a long way, you know. My mom and Dad was married 49 years, 4 months shy of their 50th wedding anniversary, and I can remember 49 years on their anniversary. He gave my mom a card, and Dad, you could tell he searched for the right card. It wasn't just like, yeah, happy anniversary, whatever. And he would always write, from your ever-loving husband, in big letters. And when they got married at Justice of the Peace, Conway, South Carolina, and it was $10 to get married. And he told my mom, he said, at that time, he said, well, you're the one that wanted to get married. He said, pay the man. So she paid $10.
I had to pay the $10.
So on their anniversary, 49 years, he had a $10 bill taped inside that card, and he said, I always pay my debts. He said, so here's the $10 that you spent 49 years ago in Conway, South Carolina. So he was a joke like that. He liked making people laugh. Children and, you know, elderly people. I mean, you can never go wrong. That they had his heart. And so I think I have a lot of that traits, I believe, because I'm a big cut up. You know, where I work, you can ask people that, you know, I like to make people laugh. I like to bring a smile to somebody. So, and I'm glad that I was handed that trait.
And you and I have been cutting up a lot of years now. More than we're going to admit to on camera, right?
Yeah. Edit that. Not that many years.
Now, you shared a story with me earlier before the cameras were on. There was a particular story your dad liked to hear you tell, didn't he, about when you were little growing up?
Oh, yeah. He got a big kick out of this. And I was 7 years old, so you can do the math. You know, he retired in 1977. And honestly, when we got up in the morning, my sister Patty and I, before we went to school, we had a floor model TV that had a flag stand on each corner. It was about 12 inches each one. And before we done anything else, we said the Pledge of Allegiance. And even on Saturday morning, before you had your bowl of cereal or you turned on the TV for cartoons, you said the Pledge of Allegiance. And I would tell people, and it was in a jokingly way, but it was very true that I knew the Pledge of Allegiance long before I knew my ABCs. True story. So, you know, and that was just, you know, we're proud. I mean, there's never time that I hear the national anthem that I don't just get chill bumps, or I hear taps and get, So I think he instilled that in us. We were raised to be, proud. We were raised to respect veterans. We were raised to be kind to other people, and there was so many, Dad from. A lot of times he had a saying, I'm sure glad you got to see me. And it just put a smile on people's face. Or, thank you, Lord, for the blessings I made. Oh, thank you, Lord. He would say that, I know, a minimum of 50 times a day.
Kind of what does it mean to be the wife of a Marine? And I mean,
Well, it was hard. It was hard, really, because he was gone a lot. And somebody had asked him, why can't you take your wife with you when you go on? He went overseas. He went on med cruises. Why can't you take your wife? He said, if the Marine Corps wanted me to have a wife, they would have issued me one. And I thought, whoa, good. From the provider for us. We didn't have the best, but like you said, we had food, we had a place to eat, live, clothes to wear. I mean, he was a proud man. He was
now, he received 3 Purple Hearts in his career, didn't he?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
He got wounded 3 different times.
Was those all in Vietnam?
Yeah.
He also...
He spent 2 tours.
But he was just so thankful, He said, I don't know why I'm still around, but God's got plans for me. And so, we were just blessed that we had him 75 years. We would have loved to have him a lot more, but we know one day we're going to see him again, and that's the reassurance that we have. So.